I'd like to call to order this Wednesday, March 17th, 2021, regular meeting of the Board of Education. Will you please call the roll?
Mr. Gomez?
Here.
Dr. Hall?
Here.
Ms. Moffitt?
Here.
Ms. Schofield?
Here.
Ms. White?
Item B, Agenda 1, motion to approve the agenda. It's recommended the Board of Education approve the agenda of the March 17th, 2021, regular Board of Education meeting. Action by the Board of Education in adoption of a consent agenda means that all items are adopted by one singular motion unless a member of the Board of Education, treasurer, or superintendent requests that any such item be removed from the consent agenda and voted upon separately. Motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Moffitt?
Aye.
Ms. Schofield?
Aye. Item C, opening ceremony. Welcome to everyone who was able to join us this evening in person or virtually, especially our middle school and high school top Tigers and the family and friends that are here to support them. Our vision, Cuyahoga Falls City Schools, the hub of our community, committed to a culture of caring. We innovate, we create, we personalize education for all. Our mission, every student, every day, every opportunity. Informational items. This meeting is a meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It is not a public community meeting, although there are opportunities for public participation. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic found on the meeting agenda, the individual must complete a registration form found inside the attendance notebook and present it to the treasurer. Following the introduction of the topic by the board president, followed by board discussion, the individual will be recognized. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic not found on the meeting agenda, she or he must notify the superintendent and/or board president of the topic no later than 3 business days in advance of the meeting. These individuals may share their comments during the board business portion of the agenda. In both cases, comments will include the name and address of the individual and be limited to 3 minutes. In addition, in public session, the board will not hear complaints about school personnel nor against any person connected with the school system. An unabridged board agenda for this meeting can be found on your electronic device at the address shown on the screen, www.boarddocs.com/oh/cfalls/board.nsf. And for your convenience, hard copies of the board agenda may be found on the librarian table next to the librarian's desk. The next regularly scheduled meetings of the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education are on April 7th and April 21st, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. in the Cuyahoga Falls High School Library, 2300 4th Street. And now for our Pledge of Allegiance, followed by positive reflections. Dr. Alex Hall.
Please stand as you're able.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight's positive reflections comes from Shel Silverstein. This is a little poem called Listen to the Mustn'ts. Listen to the mustn'ts, child. Listen to the don'ts. Listen to the shouldn'ts, the impossibles, the won'ts. Listen to the never haves, then listen close to me. Anything can happen, child. Anything can be.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. Item D, presentations. 1, staff recognition, Staff Star Award. Dr. Nichols, Mrs. McClure.
Yes, I'd like to invite to the podium our Director of Human Resources, Ms. Ellen McClure. Ms. McClure?
Good evening, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day. We are here this evening. Our first presentation is for our Staff Star Award. For those of you who may not know what that is, this is an opportunity that we take to recognize our colleagues. This person is nominated by their colleague, not by, And it's not a board nominated award. It's somebody who is really looking at the work that these people are doing. So tonight we are recognizing Kim Cole. Kim Cole, come on up. Kim represents our treasurer's office. She is our accounts payable officer. And her nominator is Mrs. Christy Stoikoy, who is our treasurer. Christy, you can also come on up. So I just have something short to read that Christy wrote, and then I think Christy also has a few words. She tells us that everyone should be so lucky to have someone like Kim to work with. Kim has an incredible work ethic and is always willing to help anyone and everyone. Kim is the definition of Black Tiger pride. She takes her work very seriously, but still manages to make everyone laugh. She goes above and beyond every day. She is reliable, trustworthy, and passionate about making not only the treasurer's office, but the entire district the best it can be. Kim is truly a shining star to all of those around her. Kim is also a fantastic party planner, and we have the most wonderful luncheons in our offices because of Kim. So, Kim, we have a couple of things for you before we let Christy talk. First of all, we have a certificate that says it's presented to Kim Cole in recognition of your outstanding contribution to the achievement of Cuyahoga Falls City School District students and the support of Cuyahoga Falls City School District staff members. Thank you. Black Tiger Pride pin for you. And our Shining Star Award.
Oh my goodness.
That has a star, and again, it says in recognition of your outstanding contribution to the achievement of Cuyahoga Falls City School District students and support of our staff. And that is for you.
Those parties get shut down though. As soon as it's over, it's shut down. We're on to the next. She's very diligent about that. I started here about 2 years ago, and Kim is, as best described, a great mother hen to that department and the entire. She keeps me. Do you need to eat? Have you eaten lunch yet? Do you want to? And if I don't, it doesn't matter. She puts it on my desk on a plate because then she knows I'll eat it no matter what because it's sitting there. But she truly takes her job very seriously. I have to tell her many of days just to go home. You've been here for 11, 12 hours. You've been here since 4:30 in the morning, and it's now 4 o'clock. It's time to go home. And she still has that, I have to get this done. And so I know that I can always depend on her to get anything done that we need done, and that she's going to do it the right way, and that we're going to get the best deal out of it. She's not letting any penny go by without scrutinizing it and making sure it's going to the right place and it's worth it. And so I was very lucky when I came on, not only for Kim, but the rest of my staff that is here, that they were just so willing to help me and they were so welcoming. And that I really didn't have to do a whole lot with them because they already knew what they were doing. They had a great work ethic, and they were fun to be around. So I thank you very much for all your hard work. It is very much appreciated.
Thank you.
While you're here, you might as well.
These are a bunch of great people. And you're right. My staff is even here. They could have been home. They didn't have to be here. I enjoy all of you. And you're right, I love my job. So, wish we didn't have to wear these masks, but I just want to thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kim truly makes it every day fun. You never know quite what you're going to get when you walk through the treasurer's office, but it always makes you smile. Our next presentation is for the Top Tiger Awards. The Top Tiger Award is a board award that is sponsored by the Cuyahoga Falls Foundation and Alumni Association. And here representing the Foundation and Alumni Association, Mr. Gary Medcalf. Gary?
Thank you. Congratulations to all the top Tigers. And congratulations to Kim. She does have the best jokes of the week. I never miss them. I'd like to thank our top Tiger sponsors, Donato's Pizza, Dietz's Florist. As you can see, you're going to get a beautiful green or orange carnation tonight. And Young Screen Printing, who donated the bags for us. The foundation has assisted in the building of the new entrance to Clifford Stadium, Tiger Trail. And there are bricks that you can still be purchased. These bricks, when the new stadium is being built, will be moved up to the new stadium. So you don't have to worry about that. We help out with class reunions. We sponsor all class reunions. We honor distinguished alumni every year. We provide teacher grants. And last but not least, we have scholarships. Last year, we had 72 scholarships worth over $170,000. And we could not do that without our alumni who have donated to help out the students here at Cuyahoga Falls High School. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Did Kim get a flower?
I didn't. Are these?
Let's make sure that Kim got a flower. Those are Kim.
Um,
One of them.
I think, well, unless we have people who twirl, we're good to give her two.
Okay. Be careful with the flowers. Top Tigers, if I could have your attention, please. The protocols for this evening, I will announce your name and I will ask you to come stand next to me. When you get up here, I will read your nomination form from your teacher or teachers that nominated you. Ms. McClure will hand you a flower and a goodie bag. Inside the goodie bag are things like certificates, bracelets, pins, a certificate from Donato's, a certificate from, pardon me? Young's, for an item at Young's. And the flowers are sponsored by Dietz's Florist. So, you ready to go? All right. Our first top Tiger is an 8th grade student at Bullock Middle School, Gavin Johnson. Parents, by the way, the nomination forms are also in the bag. Hi, Gavin. Gavin Johnson is nominated by the 8th grade team at Bullock Middle School, and they write, Gavin Johnson deserves to be recognized as a top Tiger at Bullock Middle School for his achievements. In the fall, Gavin struggled with all remote instruction, but during this 3rd grading period, he is doing much better all around. In the classroom, when he is in the building or remote with a Zoom, Gavin is a focused Black Tiger Pride student. In class, he is attentive, well-behaved, respectful, and quite interested in all of his classes. In both the remote and hybrid world, Gavin contributes in a positive and upbeat manner. Gavin is responsible by completing his homework, and he is willing to redo and revise work as needed to improve his grades. He does not hesitate to ask questions. With his improved work ethic, Gavin will adjust well at Cuyahoga Falls High School. Outside of high school, Gavin enjoys skateboarding and snowboarding. Gavin also enjoys his pets, a dog, a bird, and 2 snakes. Gavin has expressed an interest in cars, and after high school, he hopes to fix cars and pursue a career as a diesel mechanic. Gavin, did you know we have auto mechanics and we have auto collision, both of those programs in our high school? Good. Just making sure. Gavin makes our jobs as educators much more rewarding. Keep working hard, Gavin. You are a top Tiger. Congratulations. Our next top tiger is an 8th grade student at Bullock Middle School, Delaney Dahlman. Hi, Delaney. Delaney is nominated by Mrs. Wilkins for the 8th grade team. The 8th grade team is so happy to nominate Delaney as our top tiger for this month. Delaney is a teacher's dream, as she is a strong student who constantly seeks to improve and become even stronger. One of her great strengths is that she is so mature in recognizing when she needs clarification from her teachers and advocating for herself to get it. She goes to her teachers when she needs help, and then she works very hard to take their advice and incorporate it into her work. This ability, coupled with her strong work ethic, equals consistently outstanding work. If Delaney's work were not enough, she is also a joy to be around. She is always smiling and positive, and she goes out of her way to be kind to everyone around her. Delaney has a full plate, participating in many honors classes, band, and 8th grade community leaders group. Delaney serves as a role model for her peers, and Bullock is fortunate to have her. Congratulations. Our next top tiger is a 7th grade student at Roberts Middle School, Logan Hillman. Hi, Logan. Logan is nominated by Mrs. Carr, 7th grade ELA teacher. Logan Hillman is a very good student for a number of reasons, but his hard work has to be the one that sticks out the most. As a student at Roberts, Logan has become known as a person who tries and tries again. Even in a year where there has been significant life changes to school schedules, Logan has continued to work hard in all of his classes, earning merit roll for quarter 2. Logan has always been good at communicating with his teachers when he has questions and concerns, but also is a positive contributor in all of his classrooms, whether it is online or in person. Thank you, Logan, for being our top tiger. Congratulations. Our next top tiger is also a 7th grade student at Roberts Middle School, Amelia Miller. Hi, Amelia. Amelia is also nominated by Mrs. Carr. According to Mrs. Carr, Amelia is, quote, an absolute ELA superstar, end quote, who is always willing to offer up ideas. She has consistently earned A's in almost all classes and is the highlight of all of her teachers' day. This award is long overdue, as she has always had a strong work ethic in class. To show how hard she works, Amelia has a grade of 100% or higher in 3 of her 6 classes. She is such a sweet person who simply wants to do well for herself and for others. That is why she is a fine example to all of us of what it means to be a top tiger. Great job, Amelia. Our next top tiger is a junior at Cuyahoga Falls High School, Jacob Capaldi. Hello, Jacob. Jacob is nominated by Ms. Melissa Curtin, who is a social studies teacher. She writes, Jacob is in my AP psychology class, and he is one of the students I can always count on to be prepared and actively engaged in class. He asks thought-provoking questions about class as well as about current events and other social studies related issues. He keeps his camera on at home, the only student in that class, period, who does, which shows how actively engaged he is even when remote. He knows how much it means to teachers to show his face, so he makes sure we as teachers don't feel so alone with our remote learners. Congratulations, Jacob. And our last top tiger for this evening is a senior at Cuyahoga Falls High School, Ashlyn Lampa. Hi, Ashlyn. Ashlyn is also nominated by Miss Curtin. Ashlyn is a student in my AP psychology class. Imagine that. She comes to class prepared every single day and is an active participant. She asks questions and volunteers to answer questions. She's also often the only student with her camera on, which goes a long way. It shows that she's actively engaged even when remote. She shows a passion for the material and an enthusiasm for school. Congratulations, Ashley. Concludes our top tigers for this evening. You are free to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Thank you. Our third presentation this evening is about our 6 through 12 construction project. We welcome TDA and Hammond who have joined us this evening. Dr. Nichols?
Our team, sure. Come on up. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Chris Smith, Bill Sherman, Jeff Tuckerman, and Abby. Help me with your last name. Rainier. Thank you. Yep.
Hi there.
Hi there.
We've asked Hammond. We've asked the construction team to be here to have a discussion with regard to engagement, our engagement process. So if you have any questions with regard to that, and Chris will make a few statements, I'm sure, to lead us off.
Sure. So we are, engagement being whether it's school engagement, community engagement, board engagement, OFCC engagement is a very strategic thing. So we always want to communicate with purpose, make sure it's meaningful for both the recipients and the people delivering the information. So we certainly don't want to have meetings just to have meetings. We want to make them meaningful for everyone. So I think that we are in the process of developing what our engagement is going to look like. And that means the school front, the community front, everything through it. We are hoping, let me rephrase that. We're hoping to get started in April, as we all know. So we haven't even begun yet. We are planning on starting in April unless the OSFC tells us no. So that's our goal, is we're pushing forward as aggressively as possible. And we're hoping to hear in the next 2 weeks whether they say no or not. So no news is good news as far as I'm concerned. We're beginning in April. So, and it will start with what's called an organizational meeting. So there'll be everybody from the design side, architects, engineers. There will be a commissioning agent if we selected one by then. There'll be representatives from the state, and it'll be an entire day facilitated session on what to expect in this year and a half of design and 2.5 years of construction. So as we develop this, we are going to be in front of you again, rolling out exact dates and planning to communicate. One thing that we promise is that we will not be in the community with new information that the board hasn't seen first. So we'll always make sure to honor that protocol. And one last thing, I'm going to let Abby speak here just briefly here on our community engagement. By the way, have you met Abby before? So
No, we haven't.
Abby is our director of our educational design studio. She's incredibly talented, and I'll let her speak for herself because she'll get nice and embarrassed if I just start talking about her right here. So,
Like all your top tigers did, I noticed.
that's right. There's one philosophy that we hold very, very true, is that while this is a public facility and it's a taxpayer funded and all this kind of stuff, we have to rely on our professional educators to help drive the design of the inside of the building. And then our community becomes involved with what the outside of the building looks like, how it interfaces with the nearby roads, Porter's Trail and 13th Street and everything. So there'll be lots of input from all parties, but we have to start with our professional educators. So we'll be starting with designing the inside of the building, relationships of spaces, stuff like that is kind of how we start design. So that said, I'm going to let Abby kind of fill in some blanks here.
Thanks. Well, thanks for having us. It's nice to meet you all. And I do have some things I was planning on discussing, but I understand that maybe there was a question or two particular to community engagement potentially. So I'd like to hear, before I just start diving in, are there any specific questions that you wanted me to address?
Oh, well, I think it would help us if you just start and we'll go from there.
Okay.
See what questions you answer.
That works. All right.
One of
I
the
like
things,
it.
one of the things that I want to share with you, and I don't even know if all of you know it, but I have every indication that we're going to start in April because I have an owners meeting with OSCC April 1.
Oh, that's good.
So, just so you know.
Okay. All right. So Chris kind of mentioned some of the different groups that we meet with. And really, again, we're kind of just using this whole month of March as kind of bonus time since we haven't really started the project. So we're doing some due diligence, and we're also taking the time to start to plan and gather the information we need to go ahead and begin. So with engagement, we think of who we're engaging with and how we're engaging them. And so the who would be you all as the board, obviously. The OFCC is another component since they're essentially a co-owner in the project. And then we have community facing engagement, and then we have school facing engagement. So some ideas on who the school might be, and Chris touched on this a little bit, would be the administration. And we'll develop a core team, which we haven't done yet. But that team will meet throughout the project regularly, kind of as an executive team. And that'll be, kind of the backbone of getting all of this other engagement put together. So we haven't even formed that group yet. Then the staff, which will be both educators and different departments and all of that. We have a lot of different ways we can engage the students, and then any extracurricular groups as well. So that's kind of the school side of the engagement. We have a lot of different ways that we do that. The other piece of this would be community engagement. So that might be parents or alum or residents. That might be community groups. And we'd love to kind of, even if you have some tonight that you want to, any folks you want to make sure that we're engaging with. So those like school focused community groups. We heard a couple names mentioned earlier in the presentation with someone who spoke on behalf of the alumni. So, that's probably a group we want to get in front of. So again, we're just kind of trying to build that catalog right now of who those folks are. And then various government agencies. So we'll be meeting with police, fire, the city, and a lot of folks that we need to kind of work through, whether it's code related items or process or safety related items, that'll make up the community piece. So we have board, OFCC, community, and staff. And we have a lot of tools that we have developed to kind of lay out each of those very specific engagement timelines. Doc may have seen a peek. We'd like to put an actual calendar together that shows how each of those 4 groups that I just mentioned are woven together through the design process and what touch points we meet. We have some history from working on your pre-bond campaigns with you. We know that the community and the committee input was very, very important and that you want to keep that going. So we will keep coming back to you with a robust plan that we will propose to you. But we will kick everything back off again with all 4 of those groups with a visioning session. And I know we did one in pre-bond, and I think everyone here was probably there because I think it was done as a board meeting, if I'm not mistaken. And so we'll do that again. Back then, we were still kind of defining the master plan and defining the project. So this will be a little bit more focused, and we'll know what we're talking about. We'll know the site, we'll know the building program. So that's how we'll kick off the process again with that visioning day. And that's when we really combine those different groups of community, staff, board, OFCC to kind of kick the process off. So we do have some touch points that we are planning on. Our first community touch point would be meet the team kind of night. So that would be a night where Hammond's team and our team would be available. We would kind of go over big picture timelines, project overview, things of that nature. And then what we love to do early on is called a visual preference survey. So as Chris mentioned, we really like to work with the educators on the relationships on the inside of the building. And we really like to focus on the outside of the building and the site with the community. So we've developed some tools where folks can vote and give feedback on different kind of aesthetic or architectural elements. And we like to do that right away because it takes us a while to get our schematic design done. And that way we can bake those preferences into the design. So that would be our first touch point. And if we're getting going in April, then we would want to do that sometime in April. So we'll solidify those dates again as we continue to work on this calendar. We'll have the visioning session as we discussed. So that will be something that will have the opportunity for community input as well. We want to do another touch point with the community to share the educational visioning results with everyone. So that would be what were our primary goals and objectives that were developed. And that might be more education focused, and it'll certainly be project focused. So usually we get some goals and objectives that are pretty holistic that come out of that day. So that will be another touch point. And then once we get through our first phase of design, which is called schematic design, that's kind of our first floor plan, and it's our first renderings and thoughts about 3 dimensions on the building. We'll present that, and that'll probably fall in line in October, would be when we would be ready to present that to the community. Because remember, right at the beginning, we're going to ask what they want the outside to look like. Then we're going to spend really those next few months working with the educators on how does the floor plan lay out. And then we will design, and then we'll have Hammond estimate it, and we'll estimate it as well. And we'll make sure we're on budget, which we will be. And then we'll come back to you and we will show everyone the results of the input that they gave at that first session. So those are our thoughts about how we could do larger scale community input. So that would be maybe a night where we invite folks here or to the auditorium. Maybe we can do some online sessions. That's one thing through COVID that we found was actually a great tool. Whereas we used to, have community meetings, and in some communities maybe have 50 to 100 participants. We've been able to do some of these meetings throughout the past year in other districts and get several hundred, responses and attendees. And so that's something that we can think through, but it might be a way to garner some more input, especially if we do something like a survey, like the visual preference survey. We can get a lot of different voices in the mix, even if they can't attend in person. So those are kind of our design touch points that we are kind of larger community engagement opportunities. But in addition to that, we've talked about making sure we attend your first board meeting a month so that we can give you an update essentially on what we've been up to for the weeks prior to that. So we'll let you know what different groups we've been engaging with, what progress we've made with Hammond on the constructability and design side. We'll let you know what progress we've made with any city agencies that we've been meeting with, let you ask questions. And then, of course, any design updates as they come along will come to you first before we do any community outreach that we discussed. So honestly, I could stand here and keep talking forever, but I just wanted to give you kind of an overview. And again, just let you know that we came here tonight to kind of give an introduction to the process, but we will have a more kind of fleshed out schedule once we actually get that core team established. And what you can expect to see is a literal calendar for the rest of the design process. And what we typically do is color code community engagement, one color, staff engagement, another color, student engagement, another, and then board engagement. So you can kind of see how those touch points will interplay with our design schedule. And that's what we plan to come back to you with once we have a draft of it. But again, as Chris mentioned, we're kind of in the pre-project stage right now. So so with that, I will let you ask any questions or
So a
have
couple
any
things that I'd
comments.
like to put out there, just so everybody knows. That exterior piece, first of all, we have 2 meetings coming up tomorrow and the 25th, where we're going to be fleshing out the schedule more in detail, dates with times, so on and so forth. Right now, on the timeline that I've shared with you guys, that I share with you every week, right now, the exterior portion starts with the board April 7th. And so what we're anticipating at April 7th is a presentation, more formal presentation in terms of here's our engagement timeline, if you will, and this exterior portion. In that engagement timeline, you'll see where the exterior portion is going to be engaged with the community at large after we engage you. And on the timeline right now, it's April 12th is our visioning session. And we are fortunate to have at our Avail 2 larger spaces, NeoNet and the ESC. NeoNet's where we held the visioning session in Fremont. So those spaces are available to us as well for that kind of a visioning session. They're larger spaces for us. So those are some things that I wanted to share with all of you. And Abby's talking about the engagement associated with the design phase. There's also engagement associated with the construction phase. And I don't know if you want to say anything to that or not.
I can, and I'll just say a few words. I won't belabor it. Again, my name's Bill Sherman. I'm with Hammond Construction. It's been a little bit since our interview. Most of you know Jeff Tuckerman of Hammond. We have very similar philosophies. Our Hammond and TDA, ironically, when it comes to communications. So that's wonderful. Our communications director is Kim Adams, and she regrets she could not be here. Her son's birthday is this evening, so that has her predisposed. But we have very similar to what Abby spoke about. You'll see the same degree of engagement. It'll shift from design to construction, so the focus naturally will follow in parallel with the progression of the actual project. As the project shifts from design to construction, we'll then pick up the baton a little bit more, and we'll do more of that engagement and outreach. And we're really excited about the opportunities when it comes to reaching out on the construction front. There's a whole lot of pre-meetings with neighbors and concerned citizens, and that, no question, that's super necessary. The really exciting part is what we can do with staff and students. You'll have a working laboratory, a real live working laboratory. We've done everything from presentations with the younger students coming out to the schools, and we love doing that. We've done thermal transfer lessons using the building envelope with some of the high school students. the opportunities are wide ranging, and we're excited to start to interface with Doc and staff and just explore those, talk about some things we've done in the past. And of course, there are the very customary ceremonies that you would expect. Groundbreakings and dedications and steel beam signings and topping out ceremonies. So those will all make a lot more sense. They'll be very overly communicated, but it's an exciting time.
And right now, the core team would consist of our cabinet and inclusive of John. And so those will be the folks that'll be with us tomorrow. We will be meeting in this room tomorrow, 1 to 2:30, and it's pretty much a standing 1 to 2:30 meeting. Every Thursday, there's something. So with that, I turn it over to you guys. Just wanted to make sure you had all the information.
When will the invitations for the visioning session go out, Dr. Nichols? Because we're less than a month away. That's a Monday. Community members would probably need to take a day off of work.
Right. So
When's that going to happen so that they can actually plan to be there? It's one of the only opportunities that they get to have any say in the process.
tomorrow, like I said, we're going to identify the exact days, times, locations, and from there, we'll start with the invitations.
So when will that be?
Very soon after that, we've got sample letters already put together. And we'll identify folks. Let's see, if tomorrow is the 18th, I could see invitations going out by the 25th.
When's your owner meeting with UFCC?
April 1st. I can't jump ahead of that until you guys get the go ahead on your drawdown schedule.
So again, I know that we've identified that week as a great week to do our visioning, the week of the 12th, but I think, you know, we want to get some feedback on what will work best for everyone to get the most participation. And one thing I heard you mention is that it's one of the only opportunities for that type of engagement. And we certainly don't want anyone to feel that that's not enough engagement. So, I mean, again, I think we had right now about 4, like, I guess I'll call them like community at large touch points. But we would certainly welcome any additional updates. We just want to make sure when we do those like more community at large meetings, we have some meaningful new information to share each time. So whether that is welcome, we're introducing ourselves and we'd like to meet you and know what the building, what you want the building to look like, versus, hey, here's how we've incorporated that feedback and we're on budget. Those are the types of touch points that we want to make sure we make. But again, in between, you know, we'll be here once a month. And I think we're still trying to develop that list of any like school/community groups that you would like us to interface with maybe more directly. So we're happy to hear that.
So with that in mind, with your question in mind, and knowing that we're going to meet tomorrow and we're going to discuss where we are with OFCC, and they just turned tonight that I have an owners meeting scheduled for the 1st. They can't start. They can't go until OFCC says they can go. And so we may discuss, maybe it's not the 12th. Maybe it's then the 19th or whatever it is. Keeping in mind your statement, which is a very true statement, that people may need to take time off, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, they need to know so they can make arrangements. When you talk about meeting with community groups, can you talk a little bit about what that would be? Would that just be talking at them, or is that actually trying to get feedback of what their ideas might be?
I think we hope to never come talk at you too much. So I would think we would want, you know, any groups that you're interfacing with that maybe are commonly using your facility as a joint use, or maybe they're using your site, or it might be folks who, you know, will use the stadium a lot, or maybe it's, as an example, an alumni group might be really invested in any artifacts from this building that they want to identify and save and bring to the new building. So we always like it to be conversational work session type interaction. And so I just threw some examples off the top of my head about how we might interface with an alumni group versus a, you know, some other type of group. But we would want to meet with them much the same way that we would meet with like a department to talk about the arts, like art department to talk specifically about the art space. You know, if you identify, you know, some groups in the community, I know you have an alliance for business, the Business Advisory Alliance.
Alliance for School and Community Growth. It's
Growth.
about 70 members that are
Yeah.
business, university, and school related.
So like, you know, that we've already identified as a group, and we've already met with them once, and we'll continue to speak with them. And we heard some great things in that meeting. So depending on what the group is, I think we would want to speak about whatever parts of the project would impact them and get their feedback on it, so we can incorporate it into the design.
So we would want to get that list to Dr. Nichols to get to you sooner rather than later, because you want that on the front side of that. Okay, I
Yep.
appreciate that.
And part of our agenda tomorrow and what we'll be distributing to Doc and Joe is what we call a programming information request form. And it's about 15 kind of questions or things that we want more information about. One of them is any pertinent community groups that you have. So that'll be going out to the team tomorrow, and I'm sure that that's a document that could be distributed to you all through Doc if that works.
Absolutely.
If that works for you all.
Absolutely.
And I think it would be great if you could go to Village Council in particular, because they don't get a say at the end of the day. They won't be voting on anything because we're not building in the village, but the village is an important part. And so I think their council people would be a good way to approach that, to make sure that the village gets a voice in the process, because they're an important part of our district.
Absolutely.
City council, they're gonna have to sit through all the long planning and all of that, so
Yeah.
they're gonna vote on that, so they'll have a different perspective and job. And I know I work for the city, so I know the engineering guys are very excited because they stopped me in the hall and asked me if they're gonna get to start talking about this. But one of the big things that I think is gonna drive design is water retention. That's a flood area,
Yep.
that neighborhood floods,
Mm-hmm.
and that's big on their mind because they say it when they stop me in the hall.
Mhm.
So I just want to throw that out. That'd be a good front conversation with what they're thinking. I don't want to go North Olmsted. I don't want to bring back bad
Right.
memories. But it is a flooding issue. It's
Sure.
a floodplain, so I know that that's going to drive a lot of that. It would be good to have that on the front.
So our city water folks were presenters at the Rotary, at one of our virtual Rotary meetings in the last couple of weeks. And so we have had the opportunity to engage in a lot of those, at least initial parts of those discussions on the infrastructure that's in the city and how this project may impact the infrastructure, including the floodplain down at the bottom.
And actually, your city planner is retiring here in the March, right?
Right.
So we're meeting with him coming up before he leaves. He's agreed to meet with us just to do a download and just get his thoughts on the site. He's got a lot of history, so we're just doing that.
Yeah.
Be proactive.
And that's going to be, again, before we probably have like our civil engineer identified and the rest of our engineering team, but we want to make sure we took advantage of his information before he left. So.
And then in terms of community having a say, so I get what you're saying. You want the educators to decide that, but we're also not building a building for today. We talked about it before, we're building a building for the 22nd century because it's going to be for generations to come. And it's $100 million+ project that this community is investing in. The purpose of the buildings are for the community. It's to educate the youth of our community. I think to not involve parents in that process of the inside is a mistake. I think there needs to be more of a parent voice in that. I'm not saying random community members, but specifically parents that are invested in this district. Because we talked about how design drives education. We talked about that a lot on the front end of this process. And so if we're going to talk about designing a building that's going to affect how their kids are educated, I think that parents ought to have a say in that. And I also think it's a mistake that for a district that claims to be the hub of our community, to say to the community that the only thing that they really get much of a say in $100 million+ project that they're paying for is the color of the bricks on the outside. That's how it's being received from people. I talked to some people that were at the session that you gave. That's how people feel, that the only thing I get to have a say in is what color the bricks are and which direction, something faces on the street. And I don't think that's sitting well with our community. We have very involved and vocal community, and they have been very supportive of us. They passed this, not just this bond levy, but 4 mills on top of that. It was a huge ask. And so to not give them much of a voice does not sit well with me. And that goes to something I like to ask to Dr. Nichols. When we were on the front end of this project in the pre-bond phase, you said to our committee that we had several times that we'd be reconvening this type of a committee, but that's not in the process here.
Okay.
So what's going on with that?
We'll talk about it in our meetings here.
I'm not saying that that's what it has to be done. I'm asking you, you said that is now not part of the plan.
Well, reconvening like a facilities planning team,
You said
is
we
that
would
what
be
you're
reconvening
suggesting?
A community
What I,
group like this. You said it several times.
okay, so that's what I think we're describing in this process, like the visioning, like the group that was involved at the visioning session, like when we reconvened to talk about exterior, like and I hear what you're saying about the interior, and I appreciate that. Specifically, I'd like to take one thing and flip it around, though. I would say that the education is driving the design. And that is the purpose of the visioning session. That is one of the main purposes of that visioning session. So it is at that point, at first, that our community, parents, etc., will have the opportunity to provide their input on what they'd like to see on the inside of the building. And then that provides guidance for the design. So I'd like to flip that part back around. Now, I think we have several, I think Abby outlined several opportunities of reconvening groups like that. The facilities planning team that was a cross-section of our community. And that's what I was talking about. There'll be multiple opportunities to reconvene cross-sections of our community.
Outside of these 4 opportunities that they get?
Well, I think there's a lot more than 4, really.
Yeah, well, and again, I'm
Is this gonna change then?
absolutely.
First of all, what I need you to understand is that was our first pass. That was our first meeting, our first pass at any kind of a calendar.
Mhm.
With 2 more meetings to flesh out more pieces in that calendar. That will absolutely change. None of that includes any of the construction pieces. Okay, so that was just first pass, first glance. And that's what we're going to be fleshing out more on the 18th, tomorrow on the 25th.
Yeah, absolutely. And if what we're and again, I know that some of us from pre-bond, but some of our design team, including the project manager whose name's Scott Allman, who you will meet, who is not able to be here tonight. Part of what we want to do when we come down here in these first few board meetings, as we kind of get to know you all a little better, is identify. Again, I think I said before, we really don't ever want to come here and talk at you, and I truly mean that. So if what we're hearing is that there's a dedicated kind of either spin-off, or if it's literally the same group that worked as a committee for pre-bond, if what we're hearing is that we want them to kind of be another one of those branches that I mentioned earlier, besides board, OFCC, staff, and kind of community at large, that's exactly what we're here to hear and learn about, and make sure that we weave it into that schedule. So, so I think we'll talk about that tomorrow. If
Absolutely.
it's that, if it's that same committee, or if it's kind of a new, development, but and I'm jotting down as we were talking here today, village council, city council, you mentioned Rotary. So we're just kind of trying to pull all this together.
That particular group was, as I said, a cross-section of our community. And so if we want that to be a branch as a cross-section of our community, we can do that.
Well, that was the promise and commitment that you made.
Okay. That's fine. I'll stand by it.
Actually, that's what I had thought too,
That's fine. I'll stand by it.
although I do agree, education drives the design.
Exactly.
I do think that.
Not a problem. We'll create it tomorrow. Or begin to create it tomorrow anyways.
I'm still confident in all of you. Don't get me wrong. I've got great confidence in all of you and feel great about that. So that's unwavering.
It's good to know before we get started.
Yeah.
I'll take any opportunity I can to reaffirm that.
Thank you.
Great selections in terms of the people we got here.
I like flowers too.
Yeah,
Right.
that doesn't come easy.
Do we have other questions for our team?
I was just thinking, the parental component is crucial, as Anthony was stating, and we've never said that that wouldn't be a part of it. But I'm also wondering if perhaps we should open up some thoughts about professional development for the people that we're inviting in to share some of the ideas that we have been discussing as a board, administration, and some of our employees related to Schmoker, the literacy program that we're going to be pushing full steam ahead. I think it helps parents to have the perspective of not only their personal experience in the community with their children, but also to have a better understanding perhaps of educational thoughts, educational practices, what the educators are bringing into this as well. Because I don't want, and I'm thinking, I'm hearing this from Anthony, and I don't think this is the intent at all. You know, we versus them. I think it's a team that works together. And the more input that I can have as a parent helps me understand perhaps the design that we're pushing forward. So I'm wondering, you know, because so many of us are teachers, we're always looking for ways to help other people understand our vision, our thoughts, our intents without saying, well, we know more, because that's never the case. We just have a better understanding perhaps of this component. And if we can all share that component, then that opens up so many more opportunities. So just a thought.
There's an element of the visioning session that talks about philosophies and delivery methodologies and so on and so forth, right?
There is. And can I speak a little bit to
Yeah,
that?
absolutely.
So I think for as soon as you said professional development, I got very excited because that's something that we want to make sure that is a critical piece of our staff engagement, that it's not just us asking about the building design, but it's us asking and learning about what's holding, maybe how is this facility holding educators back from what their educational goals. Forget about architecture, you know, in any way, shape, or form. And so part of, again, I keep talking about coming back to you with like a more detailed plan. And when we get the staff engagement a little bit more fleshed out, we have a design timeline where we have staff engagement that runs along the top and professional development runs along the bottom. And what we actually have talked about really briefly in our first meeting with Doc was really trying to work hand in hand so that we know what type of professional development is planned. Because really what we think of the next couple years is an opportunity for educators to maybe set up a mock space or classroom somewhere where they can test some of the things that we're designing out. And you know, we kick the tires on this and we actually don't know if this is going to work. And so we have a lot of different ways that I think we can make the PD piece fit into kind of maybe what could be a more stagnant, like reviewing floor plans or something like that. So that's definitely something we want to do. And something that Chris mentioned to me, I think, was that last time he came and spoke with you, we talked about pulling together some different resources that could go out to you all or the community to read about student-centered education and how it kind of influences design and vice versa. So I've got a list of links to some things. I can share that tomorrow. You can let me know if the right way for that to get distributed is, you know, through you to the board.
John will be there. Our communications person
Okay.
will be there.
Yeah. So we got some recommendations. And we also, I think in our first conversations with the educators would welcome that to be a two-way street. So we can think of some creative ways to share that out. There's also a really, I would barely call it a book. It's kind of more of a booklet that I think would be a great kind of kickoff to the process if we want to distribute that or recommend that as reading as well. So we are putting that list together that you requested.
We can recommend a great book by Mike Schmoker for you all to read. You'll understand the direction we've been doing a book study between the Board of Education and all of our administrators on Focus by Mike Schmoker. So using that as one resource to help define what we would like education, where we're at, where we'd like to be. So doing some work in that as well. And next up, we're gonna hear from all these wonderful people that are patiently waiting about what our ideas for like our K-5 literacy is. That's what they're here to talk about. We're doing a lot of curriculum stuff.
Questions?
Any questions?
Anything?
Thank you all very
Thank
much.
you.
for your
Thank you so
time.
much for being
Appreciate you
here.
joining us tonight.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. Well done.
That should be
Picture
our
good.
theme song
You
here.
want to see it?
I'm
Yeah,
so excited. And I just can't hide it.
I'm
For
about
the
to lose
wonderful people
control
that were
and I
patiently
think I
waiting.
like it.
Sorry.
That's for a fine arts. people.
I'd like to invite to the podium
Okay.
Dr. Rachel Seifert to share the literacy plan and her wonderful team.
Yes. Well, I didn't know. Because they did a lot of work. Okay. Oh, now I have two of them.
All right, are you set? All right, well, thank you so much for having us tonight. We're very excited to share this with you. And without further ado, we're going to get going. So right now we want to introduce members of our literacy committee. These wonderful people volunteered to be here tonight. So I thank them. They have worked so hard. We've been working on this project for well over a year, and they have met at least twice a month, sometimes more than that. They're very patient with me, and they have just worked harder than any group of individuals that I've met. So we have Alma Hanchin, Julie Hall, Tracy Early, Carol Lance, Tina Magis, Janet Rhodes, Amanda Wyckoff, and Lindsay Hagenauer. Here we go. So the purpose of our K-5 literacy study is to deepen the understanding of research-based literacy instruction, to strengthen best practices, to educate, and to advocate for teachers in order to provide all students in grades K-5 equitable access to instruction that is intentional, consistently monitored, and routinely refined.
Amen.
The K through 5 Literacy Committee agreed upon these guiding principles. All students can and deserve to learn to read and write. The district is overdue to conduct a literacy study, and as committee members, we are committed to be active participants in the process. Decisions regarding literacy instruction must be based on best practices, and we, the committee members, must take time to read, collaborate, and discuss research to help inform the literacy study. The district must invest in instructional resources that will meet the needs of our diverse population of students, that will promote the comprehensive approach to literacy instruction, and that will offer rich and challenging reading opportunities that expose students to a wide variety of topics, real and imaginary. Our teachers and principals require specific and ongoing instructional professional development that can grow the instructional capacity of teachers and the foundational knowledge of administrators.
Our K-5 literacy committee members approach the study with intentionality by completing an in-depth investigation of past and current literacy practices in our district. Here are some examples of the conversations that took place during our K-5 Literacy Committee meetings over the course of the past year. First, we looked at what is currently being taught and how do our teachers determine the big ideas for instruction, as well as how are we prioritizing the Ohio Learning Standards. Next, we looked at a variety of groupings, including whole class, large group, small group, and individual instruction, as well as conferencing. We discussed what does this look like and what does it sound like. Also, we looked at equitable access for instruction, and as you know, that is paramount in our district. What are the similarities and differences in the staff and students' equitable access to instructional materials across all 6 of our elementary buildings? We also looked at time spent on instruction. Are we maximizing that time? And what is happening during this time? And lastly, we discussed how student progress is measured. The assessment piece is a critical role, and we looked at what assessment tools are used, and then we looked at how the data is informing our instructional practices.
One of the first things that we did as a brainstorming activity was we went through and talked amongst ourselves and using research and using some of the programs that we have used previously. What do we like? What do we not like? What are the areas that we feel are the most important aspects to teaching reading? So obviously we fell back on the 5 pillars of literacy and writing, which are phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. So from there, you have a handout, you have one, and it's also in the literacy study itself. We've read over 30 some articles, about 6 or 7 on each one of those pillars. And from there, we took out or extrapolated the most important information from that research and then put it down into paper to see what we felt was most important. So not only taking the author's viewpoint from the research, but then using our own expertise and background that we have. So that what you can see here in the literacy study, each pillar has all of this information in the study.
So as Tracy said, we focused on those 6 components of phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, and writing. We concentrate on district-chosen research-based articles to identify, study, deliberate, and define comprehensive literacy. Select, refine, and commit to big ideas drawn from research and instructional implications and practices drawn from the research. Review and unpack demographic data, NWA map data, Ohio State testing data, and curriculum audit data to identify patterns and trends and implications for curriculum and instruction. Identify needs based on reoccurring themes with a continued focus on student achievement, instruction, and assessment. Commit to providing ongoing research-based professional development that is embedded in day-to-day teaching, takes place in real time, and is results focused.
As we previously mentioned, as a part of our guiding principles, we discussed doing more research to find the most current information. Our way of doing that, one of our ways of doing that was to participate in the ILA conference, or the International Literacy Association conference. We each had a selection of 32 sessions on various literacy topics. And these were some of the important takeaways. One was from a 5th grade teacher, Cheryl Beisel. She said, "This session really reinforced my belief in the importance of writing. The differences in the types of writing are vital to improving both reading and writing. Steve Graham stressed that the two make each other better. As we look at improving literacy in our district, it is vital that we develop a writing program that all teachers can use. Modeling is a must. It is so important to model good writing. Students need good examples, and using good text and bad text to model must be part of the writing program." One of the things I was able to take away from this was about the physical act of reading, how your eyes move across, the students' eyes move across the text, starting, stopping, fixating, using their hands, using postures, gestures, other habits, and the spaces involved with reading. We most often think of reading as cognitive and even emotional, but rarely do we think about it in the physical way. And one of our Title I teachers, Samantha Murphy, said, when students are in a low ability group, they do not have the same reading experiences and opportunities as higher performing students. They read less in context words, have fewer writing opportunities, are asked fewer critical thinking questions, and have fewer opportunities for discussion.
Another takeaway from the ILA conference is from Courtney Lewis, our English learner district coordinator. She said that there are opportunities in literacy education for inclusiveness, engagement, dialogue, and joy. Culturally responsive instruction can be academically and socially empowering for all students. Stories can model resilience, build knowledge, strengthen connections, build empathy, and inspire kids to take action. Members of the Literacy Committee were asked what they would like to see in a K-5 literacy specialist, and these were some of the things that we agreed that were necessary. Someone who will collaborate with teachers, administration, and all staff, model best practices during classroom instruction, aggregate, analyze, and explain data, support teachers in a collegial and respectful way, provide teacher support with high impact instruction, and provide professional development to staff and administrators regarding the most current research in literacy.
So as some of you may or may not know, prior to becoming the principal at Elizabeth Price Elementary, I served as a literacy specialist for the past 6 years with Canton City School District. So I firsthand know the impact that an on-site literacy professional can have on not only student achievement, but also teacher effectiveness and efficacy. So I want to share some more comments that came out about our visions for what that literacy specialist role could look like in our district. This is from Julie Leeson. She's our gifted intervention instructional specialist. And she said, I see the main job of a K-5 literacy specialist to be knowledgeable about research-based instructional practices, to be a teacher's teacher. The literacy specialist will support teachers with informed lesson planning, provide guidance, using resources to align with the Ohio Learning Standards, and coaching in whole group and small group settings. The K-5 literacy specialist will provide leadership to teachers to grow their own instructional capacity. And secondly, Holly Clymer is an intervention specialist at the elementary level. And she said that a K-5 literacy specialist could be the front person or contact resource for all teachers to reach out to for interventions, brainstorming ideas, problem solving, utilizing their recommended practices, strategies, and expertise to narrow down any specific concerns for Tier 1 instruction, students on reading improvement plans, students in the RTI process, and just our struggling readers as a whole.
What do we need in Cuyahoga Falls? We need resources that are aligned to research-based practices that are culturally responsive and that engage students in academic rigor. We need reliable, common assessments that will support our ability to monitor the progress of our students and that will inform our instruction. We need to design curriculum and instruction to be specific and aligned to research-based literacy practices that are proven to impact student learning with the largest effect size. The purpose, context, and timing of instruction matter. We need to embed continuous and intentional professional development for teachers and administrators. Adding K-5 literacy specialists will impact instruction in real time. This will lead directly to positive student growth and achievement.
So to bring all of these things together, I can't stress enough the commitment that our teachers have to this progress and process that we have taken. We've had so many teachers ask to be a part of this committee, and it broke my heart to have to turn teachers away. But to have teachers ask to be a part of a committee that's working as hard as these ladies have worked, they've done work in between meetings. Between every single meeting, they were working on different activities, different responsibilities. And to have teachers that aren't a part of the committee to want to do that as well, I think that's a sign of how amazing our teachers are in this district, but how committed every single K-5 teacher is to this literacy process that we are engaging in. So here's some examples and summaries of our commitment. The district is committed to following a systemic design for curriculum and instruction that will impact student growth and achievement, our core business. The district is committed to supporting teachers and administrators with continuous research-based professional development to grow their instructional knowledge. The district is committed to providing teachers with K-5 literacy specialists who will embed professional development, coaching, and feedback in real time. And the district is committed to using specific high-quality resources and assessment data to define a path to drive teacher instruction. So at this point, we're ready to move past our literacy study. With all this knowledge that we have gained, take that with us on our adventure to starting our literacy plan. I personally want to thank the board for your patience. I know that this was a long process and you waited very, very patiently. I want to thank Dr. Nichols for his patience because this was a hard thing for everybody to just wait through. But we did the work, we did the right work. And our teachers have grown tremendously. Our administrators have grown tremendously. And this is just a small example of the impact that we are able to make with our teachers across this district. And all of that impact goes directly to our students, to grow our students. Thank you.
Well, thank you all so very much. It's true, we have been waiting patiently, but good things take time, and the work that you put into attending conference sessions and doing readings and having those conversations are certainly evident in the results of this study. I know I'm personally grateful for the work because our students will benefit from all that you know and are able to do. So thank you for this work. I too am looking forward to moving from the study to the plan. Thank you for your leadership, Dr. Seifert. Questions or comments from board members?
I am so excited. I truly am. I mean, I think this is like a professional booster shot because all of you are in the classroom and you go through the work every day and you're excited about your individual students and seeing progress. But when this becomes a part of your daily habit, routine, it's like getting excited and starting anew all over again. I think so. I see your head shaking and I've experienced it. And it's joyful. And I'm so excited that you have done the hard work to make instruction joyful, to make assessment joyful. Because believe me, I know how late many of you stay up, especially when you're looking at writing prompts and responses. That takes time. And, when you're looking at the MAP scores and things like that, I often think, because I'm so old, that a journal entry in front of you tells you almost as much, if not more, sometimes about the individual students and what needs to be done. So I see your head shaking. I'm glad we're on the same page because this is such thrilling work, and I know how much time it has taken. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Keep those booster shots going.
Well, one thing that you didn't mention, but I know is in your report because I read and highlighted, and that is how important the background knowledge is before they start reading to give our students. And so I just wanted to make that comment because it's in here, even though you didn't really mention it as the 5 pillars that you mentioned. And I am so, so glad as a former department chair of English department, the writing. Oh my gosh. Yes. Develop your rubrics. And I would even suggest perhaps when you're looking at assessments, taking the lower level writing, have your teachers come together and look at the students who are the worst and say, what can we do? And then figure out what you can do to help, because you might have knowledge I don't have. And then I can take what you're saying and work with those kids, and everybody is boosted. I think another thing that I looked at in this too was that you don't want to use different levels of groups like we used to. And again, pardon me, I'm English 712. I don't know much about little ones, but I remember my kids being in red or blue. And you really need to use small groups that are heterogeneous, that are mixed ability. It works wonders. I know at the high school it did for me and my students. I think it could also. And so again, I just was really excited when I went through this and I'm reading it and I'm going, oh, yes, 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 yay. So thank you very much for all the work. Keep it going. I want to get away from focusing on the tests and focusing on the writing part to assess our kids. So I do appreciate it very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. White. Dr. Hall or Mr. Gomez?
I was just going to say, in my experiences with higher education and just piggybacking off of what Patty was saying, there are a lot of educators in English, like composition in particular, who are doing this kind of work when the students get there and finding themselves somewhat disappointed by what students are able to do when they arrive there. And it's kind of like reinventing the wheel as a teacher each semester. And I would have to tell a lot of my students, I know you did well in high school. This is going to be different, you know? And sometimes that was disappointing, but the growth that they would experience over the course of sort of reimagining how they can be better writers was really a great thing to see. And so, you know, the opportunity to be able to enrich, you know, our students in the district at this level, I think is fantastic. So thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. Mr. Gomez?
For to all of you, my thanks. And what I really appreciate about this is that we gave educators an opportunity in this district that we don't give very often, not just to have a say in how you educate in your classroom, but to really have a say in how we should educate as a district. And I think it was a first step in showing our respect for all of you as experts in the field. And so I hope that that's work that continues. And I know that that hasn't always been the feel that some of our educators get. So I appreciate that we got to take that time to show you that. And I'm reading Lindsay at the vaccine clinic. I was reading your comments last night and you got those. And I saw Cheryl Bible, who I've known a long time, said the same. You know, and she was so excited to get to be a part of this. You know, people that she said to me, she goes, I've never had an opportunity, and she's been teaching in this district. I won't say how many years, because I want to still be friends with her. But you know, she's never had an opportunity like this. So I think it puts it as even as we're talking about like elementary science and what should the textbooks be, it puts a greater emphasis on how that process should be, and not just what the resources should be, but really how the education should be delivered. So I want to express my gratitude for you. And then to Dr. Seifer, as we move to the next steps in the process, we want to do a, what's it called, next year pilot, right? In 2 of the buildings. And then that would be hiring 1 literacy specialist for each of those 2 buildings. Is that
At this
correct?
point, that's what we would do.
And then would the goal then to be to hire 1 for each of the buildings after that?
Well, the goal right now is to do the pilot study.
Okay.
And from the pilot study, we'll gather information, research from those 2 buildings, and that will all be filtered back to the committee for us to deliberate on, dissect, put back together, and that work that's being done in partnership, that will make those determinations on those next steps.
And then part of that next steps is talking about resources, correct? Of what those should be. And then in terms of, if I could throw something out there, in terms of asking parents, how much time do they really read with their child at home? Because I know that that's a critical factor in early childhood education and literacy. I think it'd be great if we could do some sort of survey to parents about how much time they do, and then maybe add a question, or what are the barriers to you doing that, so that we can understand as our next people that are patiently waiting, who are talking about those student success and wellness and equity as well. You know, what are the things, you know, is it in Christ we're finding that these are the barriers in emergence and these are the barriers, or the district-wide barriers, and how can we address those? And I think that'll help inform our Title I people as well, because they'll understand more about those kids from that information. you're nodding and she's the expert. To do this, so I'm gonna take that as a yes.
No,
But
I mean, having the love of learning and I think instilling more of a love of reading in our students will also increase that home piece too, because when students are reluctant to read when they don't feel successful, that can be an immediate barrier for a lot of kids. So that's one that I think that through some new resource selection, training of our teachers, and so much of your writing, like, I mean, writing and reading are reciprocal. So when you're a better reader, you're a better writer. So I think a lot of times with reading, we get so focused in on reading that we lose that writing piece. So when we make our students stronger writers, that's gonna pay off across the board, so.
So can I address two things
Sure.
that you said, please? So first of all, I'm leading the science committee, so it'll be similar. So I think we're okay with that. Secondly, parents will be invited into this next step where we're looking at resources, going through rubrics. Parents will be a part of that whole process. So I'm excited for that. And then after we narrow it down a little bit more, then students will become a part of it so that we can have our leaders be right with the students and guide them through that whole process. So we don't want to put a ton of things in front of kids. That's not the right thing to do. But once we have it narrowed down, then we have leaders here, and really these ladies could just run the show. They're amazing. We have people that can sit with students and walk through their resources and get their feedback and see their reactions to things. So that will be a part of this next year when we have resources in front of us.
Okay. And then in terms of what we want literacy to look like and where we're at now, do you think that this is going to be like, oh my gosh, this is so far apart from where we are? Do you feel like we're on the path to this now, and this is just reinforcing? I mean, in terms of the literacy education we're providing today to elementary students, do you feel that this plan is going to be a huge shakeup, or is it going to reinforce what we're already doing?
I think we have amazing teachers out in the district that are very excited to have direct, focused, systemic leadership, particularly with literacy. Our primary teachers, literacy, I mean, it just rules the world, right? And truly, it needs to rule everything moving on up. That's really what it needs to do. And we have teachers with amazing skills. They need leadership. They need support. They need people that can help guide them, make sure that things are narrowed down and refined. Through Schmoker, we know, right? You need to focus on things. You need to use your priority standards. Let some of those substandards go away. Focus on your standards. And that means you're focusing on kids, right? So we're not focusing on all of these substandards. We're focusing on the priority standards, our best practices, and the students that are sitting in front of us. And our teachers can do that. We need to tweak things. We need to refine things. They need on-the-spot leadership with literacy specialists that can partner with them and help support them, help tweak things that need to be changed. So the foundation is there. It's our job to now grow it, refine it, and then from there, just continue growing that capacity. I don't think it's going to be a shock. The elementary teachers, they know this is going on. This is not a shock to anybody. Like I said, when they call me, can I be a part of it? That's a sign, right? That there's buzz going on. We've shared things. The administrators have shared things. This is transparent. We haven't kept it a secret. So making that connection with, do I think it's going to be a shock? I think it's going to be a shock of excitement.
Well, and I think that's important too, because we want to reinforce to parents of kids in elementary school now that just because this is something we're planning for the future doesn't mean your kid's being shortchanged now. They're getting basically the same thing. The emphasis and the, when we do what might be different in the future.
Absolutely.
But your kid's getting a great literacy education. We're just trying to make it great.
Yeah. I mean, teachers believe in lifelong learning, and they're just going to be living examples of that through this process. And they have been. Right now, we're bringing that to the surface, and we're going to let everybody see it. You're welcome.
I do have one last question, and it's based on years of teaching at the elementary, the primary level. I often ran into situations, and I'm sure you do too, where we assume that there's literacy in the home, where the materials that are being sent home are understood by the parents. And I constantly need to be reminded to not make that assumption, because we have many levels of literacy in our homes throughout the school system. So I'm hoping that your study will also consider that component as well, because I think it's crucial. You know, if we're working on literacy at school, we can't assume that the kids go home and the parents are right there with them. Sometimes the parents struggle as well. So the way we communicate with the parents, I don't need to tell you this because you already know it, but I think it's a crucial component to keep in mind when we're working with the kids as to how we address the parents and how we invite them into it without embarrassing them.
Our ICS work is tying directly into the literacy pilot. I mean, even Lindsay's on my BLT, and the book we're reading is a BLT. I mean, we're specifically having these conversations right now about how can we support our families and how can we help our staff understand some of the barriers that our students are up against. So the two projects really go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And one thing
As well as what we're doing with currently, like discussing grading and homework and all of that, it all is intertwined.
One thing I found too was when I gave students certain pages that they had to read, or certain, I didn't really do the writing pages, but they had to write certain things, so many journals a week or so many essays in 9 weeks. And they knew that they had to do that, and I made up contracts for them. And of course, the parents would come in and they'd look at their portfolio, and I'd say, this is where your child is, you know, and they would even help their kids at that point, picking out books, sharing books with me, and I'd share with them. And that might be a way to go as well in the future.
Well, so we have these lovely ESSER funds.
Yes.
And Christy met with me for a good solid hour and heard a lot about literacy yesterday. I mean, we have the potential, and obviously we're in a very, very early stage of all of this with budgeting and all of that, but we're at a stage where we could reconfigure all of the classroom libraries for all of our K-5 teachers, including title, including special education. All of those teachers could have culturally responsive classroom libraries.
Yes.
With rich literature, things that they're excited about. And it can have fiction, it can have nonfiction, real, imagine, it can have everything. So that's one exciting thing, and I hope Dr. Nichols will like that idea, because he hasn't heard that yet.
Too late now.
I did hear
Surprises. Oh,
it.
good. Okay. Oh, good, because nobody likes surprises.
Today
at
in
a board
cabinet,
meeting. The second thing would be to do something similar with our 612 and our ELA classrooms. So Julie Dudones has the luxury of doing something similar next year with 612. And so this is something that we want to make sure that we are considering as a part of what she's going to be doing next, so that we can meet the needs of the students at those higher grades. So when they're sitting in the classroom, they can just turn around and there's bookshelves of books, and they can pull books right from there. And they can sign them out from the teacher, and they can take that book home, and they can fall
And
in love
even
with
if
that
you
book.
don't get them back, it's fine.
Absolutely fine. Which is what we did last year.
Yeah.
You know,
I
at the
mean,
beginning,
that's-
when COVID
right.
hit, we just drove around and people got books, and we didn't get those back.
I know.
But they got books, and that's really what
So it
mattered.
does.
We talked about summer school and the students that attend summer school. We could give them a book, maybe even every day.
And I'm
Right?
glad you're the multicultural, the culture. That's so important to me too, because when I taught World Lit, I did like South Africa, South America, Asia, you know, all. I had to stay away from English and American Lit. Couldn't do that because there were courses. But I mean, I tried to pull from all over the world to give my students an opportunity just to understand what those people are going through or what they went through. So that's wonderful too, I think. Very wonderful.
So remembering that this literacy is the foundational piece of all of this, all of our other content areas are going to be folded in. So as we're working with all of these other content areas, and we're going through science, and we're going to go through math, and Julie's going to work on 612 literacy, everything folds together. All of that learning is married together. Social studies isn't an entity of itself, and science isn't all by itself, and social emotional learning isn't by itself. They're all connected. And that's what we will build. That's what the program, that's what the instruction, that's what our teachers are going to build for this district.
And like when I was a student here, I had to read books in psychology. I had to read actual novels in some of those other classes, not in math, but you know, that's kind of a different animal. But in some of my courses that I took, I actually had to read novels in those social studies or science classes. So that I think is a wonderful opportunity too at the higher level.
It sounds like you had a wonderful experience then.
I love my teachers here at the high school, although I'm going back a long time, but I did love them. Yes, I did, all through. I went to Price. I still remember all my teachers' names.
Oh, that, okay,
I
well,
know,
good.
I know. But I did, yes, so I
Well,
did.
Dr. Seibert and members of the committee, I just want to say, I think you see how supportive the board is of literacy in our school district, how much we all collectively, universally, and unanimously are committed to instruction, professional development, the inclusion of literacy specialists, culturally relevant and responsive resources, all of the things that you've brought up in your study. Just know that the 5 of us, 100% are on board. We appreciate and are grateful for your leadership, for your time and expertise. Thanks for sharing with us this evening.
Yes, thank you. Cameron gets to beat that. No. Oh.
Mr. Lazar, wellness and success. Smirkle, are you coming up also? Okay.
I was gonna say, your name wasn't on the agenda. You could have been home hours ago.
Well, good evening,
Good evening.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the Board of Education. Thank you for having me here today to update you all on student wellness and success. That's a tough act to follow, let me tell you. So I felt really confident until I listened to the wonderful sentiments they had to share and the wonderful work that they had done. But at the same time, I think just in introduction, you hear some of the emphasis and the collaboration and the aligning of arrows littered throughout the literacy study that I would say are direct and implicit outcomes of what we're doing in student wellness and success, right? Which I think if Rachel and I spend a lot of time together, should we have had another hour in the day, we probably could have done one presentation that would have seamlessly linked all of this together. So although these 2 presentations kind of happened on the same night haphazardly, I think they connect very well with each other. And I also wanted to emphasize Schmoker and focus with its direct tie between student wellness and success and the literacy study and the literacy plan. And, quoting directly from his research that he draws upon, which suggests that literacy is the largest determiner of life outcomes. So not only school outcomes, graduation, but life outcomes, which I think is a direct connection with equity, even to go as far as saying equity and literacy are hand in hand. So just a quick quote up there from Nelson Mandela, always, I think, a brilliant reflection to rely on the statements of others. May your choices reflect your hopes, not your fears. I think it's ingenious. Thank you, Ron. On the next slide, I wanted to emphasize the brilliant minds, although they're not all up here joining me today. Many are present, and very, very specifically called it acknowledgement of system engineers and accountability group, because during this process, we are truly inventing and realigning a systems of operation to emphasize on student wellness and success. Those engineers are the one and only Dr. Todd Nichols, President Karen Schofield. Greatly appreciate everyone's involvement. Ellen McClure. Those are the original members along with myself. We have
What about Christy?
expanded.
What about Christy?
Well, Christy's, that's a different conversation. I neglected to put Christy up there. She's
Any of
the
this without money.
she's the backbone of the entire operation.
Or at least the bank book.
She's gonna have Kim lose one of your POs.
Kim, she won the award this evening. So. Also acknowledge Ellen McClure, Dr. Rachel Seifert, Julie Dudones, Bill Bailey, Peggy Whitcomb, all additional members this year, and Holly Merkel, who has joined us this year as a new hire directly through the allocation of the Wellness and Success Funds as the coordinator of Wellness and Success. So I'll give you all a round of applause, because without you, I certainly this would not be where it is today. So just a strategic overview of the slides here. Background and scope will be the first slide: strategic initiative, deliverables and timeline, and reporting and accountability. Next slide, please, sir. All right, so a little bit on the background, which most of us are very familiar. In fiscal year 20, emphasis within Ohio's strategic plan for education, along with Governor DeWine's biennium budget, allocated $675 million to Ohio schools to directly address student wellness and success. As a school district, we received slightly over $1 million in the past 2 fiscal years for this wellness effort. We decided to define a scope for this project, which encompasses the following macro tasks. We'll talk a little bit about the strategic alignment of that in the next slide. Those macro tasks focus all on equity as one of the pillars. And then we also have social emotional learning, attendance, Black Tiger Pride or PBIS, prevention, mental health, suicide, and illegal substance prevention, as well as physiological health, which will be to come in the years to come. Next slide, please. So the graphic on here is incredibly hard to read. I just included it as an example of our strategic plan and how we are currently operating on a monthly basis. So you'll see that this team began meeting in September of 2019, 1 to 2 times a month, currently meeting monthly. The strategic organization of the document that you see here relies on those macro tasks that were mentioned in the previous slide. Specific levels of support, so they're broken down into tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, following the RTI/MTSS model. The micro tasks, which align with each of those macro tasks, the individuals who are responsible, start dates for each one of those tasks, and end dates for those tasks, if there is one. The fiscal year 20 deliverables and timeline. Obviously, these are just highlights. There's quite a bit more within the strategic plan, but we talked about the allocation of the funds and the receipt of the funds, which are the first and third bullet point. Fiscal year 20, we financially supported behavior specialists in the district as well as our high school dean. In May of 2020, we contracted with Integrated Comprehensive Systems for Equity, or ICS, which we also propose to likely use these funds for the next 4 years to work with Dr. Futura and Dr. Capper through this process, which we've all been very intimately involved, many of us in this room. Next slide, please, sir. So fiscal year 21, deliverables and timelines. Again, these are just the highlights. I think a giant highlight is highlighting or hiring our coordinator of wellness and success, Mrs. Holly Merkel. Thank you again. I can't thank her enough for all of the great work that she does. And it's not by happenstance that there are quite a few more deliverables and timeline additions in fiscal year 21 with the onset of her position. Deliver equitable social emotional learning to all students, to all learners. That will be referenced from moving forward in this presentation as SEL, so that abbreviation. That also falls in all three tiers of support, tier 1, 2, and 3 as well. In September of 2020, creating an SEL data team. This data team consists of approximately 13 different members, all stakeholders, predominantly from within the school district, consisting of building administrators, school psychologists, school counselors, teachers, as well as a couple individuals from outside of the organization in the community, both Akron University and our Child Guidance and Family Solutions. Redesigning attendance supports in May, and I'll talk about that here coming up a little bit. And completing a comprehensive school counseling plan has also been wrapped into this project plan as well. You will see that being completed here in June. The hiring of 2 social workers, which is certainly deserves a round of applause, coming up here very soon, and also later on our agenda. And a biennium budget, which I think is incredibly interesting, promises nothing, but has been submitted by Governor DeWine, that takes the $675 million allocation statewide and ramps it up to $1.1 billion that he is trying to get approved. So that continues to add promise and potentially additional funds to this project moving forward. Moving on to reporting and accountability. So this is really that team of engineers also serves as a team for accountability. So you'll see just some examples here. On the right is a graphic that really guides and drives our data team, which is a process of surveying and assessing for data that falls into the 3 categories of student support, community supports, and faculty supports. So we recently developed subcommittees within there, and we'll continue to operate in a data-driven model to ensure that we're being as responsive as we possibly can for those 3 stakeholder groups, but also that what we are doing is effective by constantly reaching out and assessing our processes. Also mirroring very closely the MTSS model. All right, and that is all I have for you today. As an update, if you have any questions, certainly my contact information is on there. I want to thank you for your relentless support for wellness and success. And if you have any questions,
I have a question. So the K-5 clubs were pre-pandemic something that we were working on. How are we going to work to bring that back in there? And then as we have discussions of Black Tiger Remote Learning Academy, how can we talk about amping up opportunities, especially for the K-5 kids, to have socialization opportunities within that? One of the parents I've talked to who loves the academy, her kid is in elementary school, has amazing things to say about the academy, but her one concern is that socialization piece that younger kids need. So how can we bring that in, and how are we going to re-emphasize those K-5 clubs? Because I know we saw a lot of desire for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a fantastic question. I'll address your second question first with the Black Tiger Remote Learning Academy. As you have heard, we also heard through a family survey that is one of the top priorities for families is how they can support their children's not only social emotional development, but really socialization in this COVID world. One thing that we're currently relying pretty heavily on is some additional research that's out there and sharing that with families about opportunities. I can tell you just as recent as in the past couple of weeks at our recent data team meeting, the subgroup of community support and parent support really has had some robust conversation about, really seeking out and finding those activities that families can still participate in during COVID times, and even like safety ranking that participation, especially for those that, have very, very significant concerns about safety, especially in this COVID world. The club question, we have, we're really still at an infancy stage in that regard. We did a lot of work early on, pre-pandemic, in terms of identifying interests, identifying faculty interests in running those clubs. that is certainly something that we will look to continue moving forward, but has been a specific deficit of the pandemic.
Because when you look at, DeWitt had the K-Kids Club, and it was so popular, and they had so many kids because it was the only opportunity they had to be in a club, but they actually had to limit it because they had too many kids. They had like 100 kids trying to come.
Yeah.
And that's, can't really manage that many in one classroom. But I just think that there's a real desire for that. And then
Agreed.
tying multiple presentations together. How do we tie in the work that we're doing here to like the building that we're going to create? Because Ohio Department of Education, their big emphasis is whole child, and not just the educational needs, but clothing and food and all these resources. And we have that happening. And so how can your group help lead how that can happen in this new 612 building? Can we have an area where we do that? We have the Black Tiger bags, and that's a great thing, but it's mostly our staff that volunteers to make that happen. Could we create an area where we have a room where we have fridges and freezers so that we can make that happen within and, bring these things in the whole child? So that would be the ask I would make of your group as you go forward. And as we're tying multiple pieces of work, is how can we tie this work into what that building is going to become and make sure that these needs are met in whatever our new building is. So, not that I'm saying that you weren't going to do that. I'm not trying to suggest that, but just since
I think one of the best pieces of student wellness and success is that it began with a strategic plan. And so nothing is haphazard, nothing is overlooked. And you'll see Mr. Bill Bailey's name on the list. Why? Because we know that nutritional considerations are part of the whole child. So he was recently added to the committee, and as Mr. Gomez says, the emphasis on the whole child doesn't end with socialization or club or whatever. And I think the comprehensiveness of this work, not just with equity, not just with attendance, not just with social emotional, it truly is a comprehensive strategic plan that I think has been thoughtfully and carefully prepared and designed. I'm extremely impressed with how methodically you continue to work through the goals for each of the years. I believe it's excellent work, and it ties in well with the literacy work. Everything is connected, and that is the key. That's the key to success, is to not have things exist in a vacuum, not have things be haphazard. And those are the things that I think we as a board are starting to see, and we're pleased with all that. Thank you for your leadership in this. We're grateful for that as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Lazar? Thank you very much.
I have one more. In terms of the Sdq surveys, and I know Ms. Merkel works on that. Reading the results from the fall, was it fall? I mean, it's scary stuff when you really see where our kids at. Or I know that's the pandemic has made these issues so much worse for so many people. And the other side of that is that we know that CSB referrals are down super low because so many of those referrals come from educators who can see those kids every day and identify when there's a change. So we know that, the mental health of our kids is really crucial. So as we get back to return to school, and as we've seen the SDQ, and we're going to administer it again, thank you.
In process.
How can we just acknowledge this huge shift that kids are taking? I'm reading articles in the Beacon Journal about Akron kids that have been out of the building completely for a year, and just how difficult it is to adjust and how that is impacting them as well. And if you're in a bad mental health place, you're feeling like you need to adjust to something new. That sense of being overwhelmed by life changing once again can really, really be not helpful, to put it mildly. So how can we address that mental health piece and just make sure from day one of full return for those kids that we're making sure to acknowledge that and and making sure that that's a big part of what we do as a district as we come back from spring break.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant idea. We certainly have had very, as President Schofield mentioned, strategic efforts. So even in the integration between a couple different programs like literacy and our curriculum redesign, we have very targeted conversations about how we're explicitly integrating social emotional learning and equity into tier 1 curriculum design. Because what we know very clearly is that the triage model is ineffective, right? It's just ineffective. We could hire 15 social workers to manage the mental health of the students along with the support for our faculty and our community. And what that results in is just a larger population of individuals at tier 1. So your statements, are certainly well mentioned, well considered, and that's where we need to really work to support all of our staff at learning to be more cognizant about how to support the social emotional needs of our children and of our families more specifically. And the other thing that we know, and we have initiatives underway that we've done professional development with our faculty this year, offered a lot of voluntary sessions and resources that, if the adults aren't well, then they can't do justice to the support of the children. So that's kind of the merging of initiatives. And with the onset and the opportunity to hire some additional social workers, that increases the purview of what we're able to do and support our educators at a tier 1 level to be able to really scale the impact of what we do for social emotional development.
I appreciate all of that. But going back to the Tuesday after spring break, kids are back. They're anxious because they really want to be back 5 days a week, but maybe mom's at home and isn't vaccinated yet. So now I'm anxious about that. And maybe teachers might be anxious as well, because even though they might have had the opportunity to be vaccinated, this is overwhelming. It's another change in the year. What are we specifically doing to talk about that? And if we're not doing something, we've got time to do something, because if you look at the Akron model and the Akron Beacon Journal articles, that it stopped. They basically haven't had the opportunity to educate kids because they had to pull back and say, kids are really anxious. This is the overwhelming change. Everything's changing once again. So we've got ideas out there. So I appreciate the strategic planning, but sometimes you have to be able to be reactive.
Sure. Agreed.
So how are we doing that?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question, honestly. I mean, it's not something that we've explicitly focused on, but it has been something that we've specifically focused on throughout the duration of this, right? We've prepared families through resources, through our newsletter, through the Roar, through our parent evening event, and access to the partnership with Child Guidance and Family Solutions on how to manage these transitions more clearly and healthy for students, right? So trying to be proactive about some of those supports and being strategic at some of the supports that we're providing and sending home to our families through our newsletters. And then also in working specifically with Dr. Seifert and her work, especially, and Mrs. Dones, in terms of how we're managing students upon return, is going to really mirror a lot of what's already been done, which is giving you an opportunity to engage in those conversations with your students, not walking in the first door, emphasizing on that morning meeting and an opportunity for not only students, but also staff to engage in some dialogue with students about, how everyone's feeling and how we can manage those things and what are the best, ways to address this significant transition and the safety concerns that ensue. But again, there's always more that we can do. And I would agree with you 100% that there's a window of time that we can work to very strategically address this transition. And we'll certainly take that comment and run with it. No, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lazar.
Yeah, thank you.
Item E, Treasurer CFO's business consent agenda.
Vice President, Board of Education approve all items listed in the treasurer's consent agenda.
So moved. I'll second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Just a few donations on there, the minutes from last week, but there are a handful of donations on there, as you can see. So I do always like to point those out because we are very thankful for those companies and community members that do donate to our different programs.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Dr. Hall.
Aye.
Ms. Moffitt. Aye. Ms. Schofield.
Aye.
Ms. White.
Aye.
Mr. Gomez.
Aye.
Item F, Treasurer CFO's business, Mrs. Christie Stoikoi.
I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the February 2021 investment schedule and monthly spending report.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
You do.
Discussion.
Yeah. Let's pull up, yeah, oh, look at you, yes. We're ready to go. Okay, so this month, as I've mentioned the last couple months, we are starting to receive our advances from Summit County for the second half, technically second half of our fiscal year, but first half taxes according to the county on a calendar basis. So we received in total a little under 13 million this last month. As you can see, that's more in previous years. Some of that is due to timing. Some of that is due to the fact that there have been the 4 mills was cast in there, so that's a little bit different because of that. Expenditures are still pretty steady. That we don't vary a whole lot unless there's some sort of big project or big repair or anything like that, service that we do. So this month was actually our lowest month so far this year. It was 4.1 million, which is under where we were last year at this time. So that of course makes the net for this month very large. It's a little under 9 million, which is good, given that the last few months have been negative because of just the cash flow and the timing of those payments then that don't come in in November, December, January. So that brings our balance to a little under 20 million at this point, which is almost double where it was last year at this time. So under 20 million is about 33% cash carryover at this moment. It will stay at 19 million because and we will have those months at the end of the year that will be negative, of course. But that to be double where we were last year is definitely a good thing. Our cash balance percentage, even though it won't stay at 33%, it will definitely increase by the end of the year, given that there is nothing unforeseen that comes up between now and then in the next 4 months, 3.5 months at this point. So now I'll Debbie Downer and go to food service. I should have led with this and then ended with the other one. Food service. So we did receive a little under 100,000 that I had mentioned before. I can tell you we received, I think 99,000 for March. So those are starting to come in hopefully now with the return of school and students being here every day for breakfast and lunch. We will see even larger amounts in our receipts. Costs were 126,000. So under last year. Again, we're under last year, but we're certainly not bringing in as much as we were last year at the same time either. It's been a negative result of operations all year long. This month wasn't as bad. I think this was actually our best month as far as that goes. It was only a $32,000 loss on that month. But that does bring us to still being in the negative with the $200,000 advance at this point. We are not, as I said, we got about $100,000 in the beginning of March. So we are looking for around 60, 75,000 right now in the food service. The good news is that they did extend the free lunch through September of this year. So Chef Bill is looking into a summer program to not only help this, but help the students and the community members, because it's not just for students.
Great.
So it would be available for any children that need it, and we're working out the logistics of that. But that's a good thing. That's definitely going to help when we don't normally bring in revenue those months, to be able to bring it in and kind of make up for some of the time we lost being remote and being everyone being remote at the end of last year. So hopefully we end up, that ends up with us being in the positive then. And I'm interested to see how the numbers change for April, once we're back for that full month of school and how many kids are utilizing lunch. So I guess I'll make that plug now that for all those kids that are coming back, remember that it is free lunch, free breakfast. You can have both. It does not cost anything. It's not going to cost anything the rest of the year. And it helps us. You're not taking away from anyone, as I know I've mentioned before, but I know that's still a thing that people feel like, I shouldn't do it because it's not. Everyone is free who wants to come and get a lunch. So I would encourage kids to do that for both breakfast and lunch, honestly. So, and then the interest. Sad and pathetic as well, compared to where we've been in years past. Good news is some of these rates are starting to tick up. So hopefully we'll see a little bit of increase now that we're getting towards the end of the year and those rates are ticking up a little bit. It was $1,600 this month. It was the lowest month we've had so far. I also don't have ginormous expectations for it to be something that it's not. We all know that it's going to come in at this. And so any little bit that we can get helps for sure. It'd be nice to see some of the numbers we saw pre-COVID, but right now, that's just not happening for anyone. So we're still trucking along there. Hopefully we see some increases with the changes that are happening right now.
Low interest rates are good for the bond side of
Yes,
things.
we gotta hit the good spot.
Yeah,
That and then get that done and then move up.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Any questions on the financials for Mrs. Stoikoi? Roll call, please.
Ms. Moffett?
Aye.
Ms. Schofield?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
I only have one. I just learned it. ESER 3. So that was signed. I haven't seen anything with any particulars or anything. What we do know is that it's about 2.4 times what ESER 2 was, which for us equates to about $5.3 million. In addition to the $2.2 million. The deadline on that I do know is still September of 2023. So the next 2 school years plus a little bit into the next, that third one after that. But those dollars are available. And I've had discussions with Rachel and Julie regarding some of those things. There are any number of things that, maybe we wanted to do and not been able to, things we need to do because of COVID that now we have the ability to do it and do it right. And make sure it's impactful to students with that. So we'll be working on that. We've barely gotten into ESER 2, and now we're moving to ESER 3. So that will be helpful in a lot of different areas for the next few years for sure.
As a reminder, could you email us at some point what the guidelines are for spending those funds? Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Stoikoi. Item G, Superintendent CEO's Business Consent Agenda.
Thank you, President Schofield. Members of the board, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve all items listed under the Superintendent's Business Consent Agenda.
So moved. I'll second. Any discussion?
I would like to point out, as we are returning to school, that we have a contract for bipolar air ionization. 612, you passed as Board of Education in elementary. Contract similar to this previously, just so everybody understands, air ionization, bipolar air ionization works as basically a chemical reaction, negative charge with a positive charge, then eradicates those and neutralizes those vapor droplets to a degree of 99%. in the air within 10 minutes and 80% on surface within 10 minutes. So it's just one more layer of safety mitigation that we have in our process.
Thank you.
I know this isn't the most exciting thing on your agenda, but the controls that are being updated, could you talk a little bit about that, Mr. Bugatti, and how that impacts what your people are able to do?
Yes.
'Cause I know they're very old.
Currently, our controls are virtually almost non-existent. They date back to the 90s, old Honeywell system. And currently, some of the major points, some of the major areas in the high school that are affected are the auditorium, the gym, the little theater, band rooms, cafeteria. Those are areas that we physically have to turn those on and off. So we don't have a constant exchange of air. With this DDC, direct digital controls that we'll be putting in, we'll be able to control those just like you would at your house. We can also call these to run continuously. And running continuously is the way the air ionization should work. A flow of air across the air ionization pucks that will create that safer environment for our children. But many times as you're in the building here, we have very, very bad temperature control. As I said, almost non-existent. And that will help in those 10 major areas. To expand upon that with the ESSER funds, we have talked about expanding into the elementary buildings as well with controls. Because our controls there are the same, outdated, Honeywell, not working very well. Many of our unit vents are blocked off from the outside, so we have more fresh air that comes in. So the controls are a very, very, very huge part of what we're doing moving forward with air ionization. Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Oh, I will.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to
Go ahead.
say I've been pounding this idea of how passionately I am about social workers for a year now. I've been annoying Mr. Azar and Ms. Schofield fairly regularly with questions about it. So now that we're at a point to be able to approve this job description, it's very meaningful to me on a very personal level. And I'm very excited. It's really an opportunity. And it also gives Ms. Merkel a kind of a team now. It's not just a one-woman show anymore. She has a team of people to really help her assist in some of these things that I know she sees as need. She has people that can help her make that happen. So I'm just absolutely thrilled about it. And I had to give you that thanks because I've annoyed you so much about it that I had to take the opportunity to thank that. But the other thing that we'd be remiss if not to mention is the Director of Curriculum and Instruction that we're approving a job description for, which will then allow us to hire someone at a cabinet level to work on curriculum and instruction. I want to thank Mrs. McClure was part of helping design that, the board members and Dr. Nichols, and there'll be a cabinet level position bringing that back in. And it's just so important. I know as a board, we share this commitment to re-emphasizing then having one person to direct all of that important work. It's really the core of what we do. So it's thrilling. It's the most important thing we're doing tonight.
Now roll call, please.
Ms. Schofield?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Moffitt?
Aye. Item H, Superintendent CEO's business, Dr. Todd Nichols.
Thank you. With regard to return to school, we're on track to be back in school 5 days a week, K to 12, April 6th upon our return. We are running a third round of vaccination. I believe April 10th is what we're looking at right now for those that might need a second shot. We're also expanding the number of entities that are going to participate in that round of vaccinations. So like I said, we're just kind of adding layers of mitigation, safety mitigation to our process. And talking with our staff, they feel good, confident, and ready to roll. Had great conversation with our CFEA leadership. They brought up some points. We shared that with administration. Administration feels confident that we'll be able to return to school in a safe manner on the 6th. So I feel good about it, returning to some degree of normalcy. So that's where we are with that. Early release schedule. My apologies, Mr. Gomez. Quite frankly, I'm floored and shocked. You are absolutely correct. We, as of this afternoon, we have 1,183 responses to our survey that we sent out Monday. It's still going to be open till Monday. Okay, so I want to put that out there. But right now, as of this afternoon, we had 82% choose to be early release Friday, and 11% that really didn't have an opinion, and only 7% that wanted early release Wednesday. And so, that you can't ignore those numbers. Okay? So my apologies. I am floored by this information. I felt like we had really good reasons educationally to go Wednesday, but if that's what the parents want, that's what we'll do.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then also on the other parent survey that we did, will you be able to provide a link to the results to the board for that so we can see there were some extended response opportunities?
Okay, we can do that.
Look at some of that. And then with that as well, how are we circling back? We're asking parents for that feedback, as you would say, what are we going to do about it? How do we complete the circle to make sure that they know that their thoughts were heard?
Well, I'll work with John Wassilko and put articles out there with regard to the results. From the surveys and what our response will be to the results of those surveys.
Thank you.
It might be a good idea to maybe focus on one school or one set of teachers or whatever of what they're actually doing on those days and get that out to the public, because I'm getting.
Such as what? Oh, on the
like
early release days?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
The work that our teachers are actually doing, because that's what I get questions about. Why are they necessary, or why do we need them? Why can't we just, so I would take that, maybe getting that out. Here's what our first grade teachers did, or, whatever, something like that.
Yep. Got it. I'm writing down notes. Okay, superintendent's comments. I shared with each one of you a postcard that will be the core of our Come On Home campaign, or the first step of our Come On Home campaign. They are being mailed to families who transferred to homeschooling, private schools, or other districts the past year. Mailing has started this last week and will continue through the month. And after that, it's personal phone calls. You will also see a billboard in the community that will basically travel through the community with similar information logo for the campaign.
Is any help needed, Dr. Nichols? And I see these are obviously personalized notes that I'm writing to dear Todd.
Yep, Mr. Wassilko would appreciate and love your help, either with postcards and or phone calls, if you are so inclined. I would say you
I'm
can
willing to
communicate
help.
directly with
Sure.
Mr. Wassilko, and
Great.
we'll go with that.
I could also, because, I'm retired.
Yep.
As long as I get my reading time in, I'm good.
So that's that side of the campaign, and thank you for asking. Appreciate that. I will share that with John.
Great. Thank you.
In terms of comments, that was one comment. Another comment that's a big comment is, and I know you touch upon it in legislative piece, but House Bill 67 passed today and will be on the governor's desk. And so in terms of the summary of the bill analysis, if I may, for you and for anyone that's listening, assessment related provisions. There are 3. It exempts public and chartered non-public schools from administering the state required American history and of course exam in the 2020-21 school year. mandates dates for spring testing windows for the 2021 school year. Requires the Department of Education or any entity with which the department contracts for scoring of the third grade English language arts assessment to send to each school district or school a list of individual scores on that assessment by June 28th, 2021. With regard to high school graduation, there are three bullet points. Well, no, there's 4 bullet points. For the 2021 school year, it permits an 11th or 12th grade student who takes or retakes or who is unable to take or retake an end of course exam to use the final course grade in a course associated with the exam in lieu of a score on that exam to satisfy conditions for a high school diploma. Permits school districts, other public schools, and chartered non-public schools to grant a high school diploma in the 2021 school year to any student on track to graduate and for whom the principal, in consultation with teachers and counselors, determines has successfully completed the high school curriculum or individualized education program. Permits a district or school that has previously adopted a resolution to exceed the state minimum high school curriculum requirements to elect to require only the minimum curriculum for the purpose of determining high school graduation for the 2021 school year. And for the 2021 school year, permits a student to qualify for a high school diploma by both successfully completing the curriculum requirements and earning the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal. With regard to data reporting, it requires the department to report any data that it has regarding the performance of school districts and buildings for the 2021 school year by October 14th, 2021, instead of by September 15th, 2021, as under current law. The next section is community school sponsor rating, so I'll skip that. And then the next section is home instructed students. It exempts parents of homeschooled students from the administrative rule requirement to submit an academic assessment record for the 2021 school year to the student's resident school district superintendent as a condition of allowing the student to continue receiving home instruction for 21-22. And we want them to come on home if possible. And it also declares it an emergency. Federal waiver requires the department to seek a waiver from the U.S. Secretary of Education for federal accountability and school identification requirements. House Bill 67 passed today.
Well, and some of the parts of that apply to juniors and seniors, particularly in regards to the end of course exams, because they recognize that your junior year, you take some of those end of course exams as well. So they don't expect those kids to then test out of them in their senior year after it's been a year later being attached from that. So it's beneficial to both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then we know for incoming students, it's a whole different ballgame because we've got all these different graduation requirements out there.
That's correct. So that's what we have. That's good news for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Nichols.
Mm-hmm.
Item I, board business, number 1 policy, first read. And we have before us policies from section B, C, E, G, and I. If there are any suggestions to these policies, please make sure that one of our 4 policy committee members has them to review. We'll be having these on our next agenda for action. Item 2, policy rescind. It's recommended the Board of Education rescind the following policies, which were reviewed at the March 10th, 2021 Policy Committee meeting.
So moved.
I'll second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Moffett?
Aye.
Ms. Schofield?
Aye. Item 3, future agenda items.
Dr. Nichols, you gave us a packet, in Fridays on the report card and your committee that you are on, and
Yes.
could you maybe give us a presentation? I don't know if that's on your list. I hate to give you more to do, but you know, I was looking at it and I don't know if I fully understood everything. I just, maybe sometime.
Yep. Remember that they are recommendations
Yes,
at this
I
point.
do.
And they have to go through a number of
I do.
iterations.
I just wanted to be able to see, you know, more and get, you know,
We certainly can.
okay, thank you.
Others? Then we usually have committee reports before comments, but tonight comments come first. So we'll start with, they do, don't they?
Not mine, but
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. Mine has committee and then in my thing, but that's fine.
The paper agenda has it the other way.
Yeah.
The electronic agenda has it this way. Whatever.
It doesn't matter.
Mrs. Moffett, you're up.
Alrighty, from Eating Well magazine of all places, they had a wonderful article about the green garden programs that some other cities are running, so I thought this might be a nice supplement to pass along to our Steves who are involved in the gardening program. Matt Shaneman, who is dearly loved by anyone who's ever been exposed to his teaching wonders, has a YouTube site now about making a paper kite that really flies. I found this on Cuyahoga Falls Talk of the Town, which I'm really supposed to be banned from by my family, but I read it anyway. Max is just incredible. When I taught kindergarten, the kids would come back from his classroom, and honest to Pete, their work looked like sixth graders had done it. He takes kids beyond what you think that they can do. And not only that, he usually tells great stories while he's teaching art. So I'm hoping that families who have not maybe experienced Mr. Shaneman's wonderful world of teaching will become fans of his YouTube sites. So, and he even made a kite right in front of us today when we were watching this, and it was a shark. It's incredible. His work is fantastic. So just wanted to do that. And I'll save the Lego publicity for someone else, since I'm the first person. I'll pass on that. But Mr. Moffett and I did take advantage of the band's fundraiser at Five Guy Burgers. Hopefully they had pretty good success with that one. And for now, I'll pass it along to someone else.
Thank you, Mrs. Moffett. I'm up next. This month's Cap'n had an excellent article, which if I were Mrs. White, I'd be reading to you, but I'm not. I only copied it for you. But lots of good
I'll
things.
read it
This
next
particular
time.
one, Developing Accomplished Writers, Lessons from Recent Research. So those of us that are reading the book Focus, I'm just going to read one quick paragraph. Opportunities to write should not be limited to English language arts lessons. Including writing in other subject areas will naturally expand the genres in which students write as they learn to write lab reports in the sciences and artist statements in art classes. Social studies classrooms are particularly fertile environments for writing and argument skill development. The College Career and Civic Life Framework from the National Council for the Social Studies acknowledges that social studies educators should demonstrate a shared responsibility for literacy learning, including writing. The C3 framework emphasizes the centrality of inquiry, questioning, evaluation, claims, evidence, communication, critiquing, all of which are crucial to argument writing in all subject areas. So it's always nice to read something that helps reinforce something you're reading. And I found that to be true with what we're doing with Focus. I have a couple extra copies if anybody would like those. We'll move on to Mrs. White.
I don't really have much other than to thank our Peggy, and I know I'm not supposed to use their first names. I'm sorry. Peggy Whitcomb and Ellen McClure for the clinic. It ran smoothly. It was so wonderful. And I also want to give a big, huge shout out to Discount Drug Mart for their pharmacists who came and delivered all the shots and vaccines. They were so wonderful to work with. I just appreciate it so much. I feel so much better getting my second dose. I feel much better now that our teachers, most of them have gotten a second dose. And I think Dr. Nichols stated we'll have a third clinic for those, the rest who didn't get a second dose. But I can't tell you what a difference and how well that was done and how grateful and appreciative I am. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. White. Mr. Gomez?
Yeah, I'm going to touch on what I touched on at last meeting about how I believe that our Come On Home campaign should be a Please Stay campaign. I think by the time that people have left our district, it's not for lack of knowing about these things. My experience, the people leaving our district are the people that are the most engaged parents and the most passionate about their kids' education. They know all these things and more, and yet they're still leaving our district. What we need to do is get to know why parents are leaving the district. We're not going to win these people back once they're so deeply frustrated with our school district that they've made the choice to leave. And as we know that our schools don't qualify for vouchers, but with the additional income-based vouchers that they did provide, our families are very aware of that, and our families are utilizing those vouchers, and the private schools are very aware of that and publicizing those vouchers, and we are bleeding families that have been deeply involved in this district for a long time. Waiting a month to send these and then 2 months to make phone calls and not prioritizing why people are leaving is a huge mistake. Listening to parents, caring about what they say, is what's going to keep them to keep their kids in this school district. And I talked to Dr. Nichols a month ago about how parents wanted to keep early release Fridays. And in fact, we know that our staff wanted to keep it too, based on the feedback we had received. And yet we weren't doing that. We have to listen to what our families want, because we're going to keep losing families and we're going to be left with not much. It's awful to hear the stories of families that have been our PTO leaders in our buildings choosing to take their kids to private schools because they're just so disappointed in our school district. Those are the conversations we have to have. Parents need to be involved more. They have opinions when you ask them what their opinions are. And we are bleeding families. We are bleeding families. And it's so sad that all we're doing is talking about what we're going to do. Mr. Wazoko presents information in our Friday packet from Dr. Nichols every week. And this project keeps getting delayed. We were supposed to be a video last month to launch this campaign. And then it was supposed to be early to mid-March. Now we're in mid to late March and it's still not done. This is not a priority because in our district, parents have not been a priority. And that's why they're leaving. I'm having conversations on a weekly basis from families that are leaving our district. And it hurts me so much. It hurts me so much. Our PTO council is going to be almost non-existent because the half of those families that are on our PTO council are taking their kids to private schools. It's devastating. We have to do more. Parents' voices matter, and we need to do more. This is not enough. It's too little, and it's way too late. Thank you.
Dr. Hall?
I just wanted to reiterate my thanks for the vaccination clinic. It was a great job. Hats off. Also, I wanted to just shout out Chef Bill again. The videos that he's been making for these recipes and things. My wife actually made the pineapple fried rice, a vegetarian variation for our family. It was really good. Those videos are awesome. And then I just, perhaps timely, I went to Marco's last night with my daughter. We bought dinner for our family because it was opportunity to support Lincoln. And I know that DQ is doing a fundraiser as well, Dairy Queen. So just a reminder to support the PTOs. They'd like to have more members. So, just a reminder to the community to look into those organizations and get involved if you can. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. Now we're ready for committee reports. Alliance for School and Community Growth, Mrs. Moffett.
Hold on. Okie dokie. We had Chris Smith from TDA come to make a presentation. And I won't go through all of the details because much of it is what we've heard this evening. We also, let me see, we had the Steve McIntosh and Steve.
Hillman.
Thank you. Come to, well, they were there to make a presentation about their urban and gardening program, urban agriculture initiative. We had many people from the community who were talking about different programs that we have within our compact, the forestry program, how this can be a part of our gardening program. I mean, once this is launched, people get so excited and want to share things that they feel would contribute to this program or how the program would benefit components of their business areas. So Mary Jane Stankini is adamant that we make this like the premier program in Ohio. She wants to be very competitive and make our program the absolute best. Diana Calavecchio spoke and talked about the retirement of our planning director for the city, and Michelle Perot said that the GARP grant students from DeWitt are now in the high school. So the program that was launched at DeWitt many years ago have developed students who might be key factors in our gardening programs at the high school. So she encouraged us to take advantage of their skill set. Let me see. I think that's pretty much all for now.
Thank you, Mrs. Moffett. Athletics and Activity Council, Dr. Hall.
Yeah, we met on Monday. It was really a great meeting. More people in attendance. This is only my second time meeting with this committee since I've been on the board. There's so sort of just a quick recap. Girls basketball. It's the smallest team in the state of Ohio. They were quarantined for 14 days, yet they still played 19 and 22 games. And they ended up 9-10. The boys basketball, they had a 1-game improvement over their last year's record, and some of the missed games that happened as a result of quarantines were good opportunities for them to have won. So that's a bummer, but they still did have a small improvement. And there's a lot of new players apparently coming up, so that's good news too for the basketball team. Wrestling, there was only 7 wrestlers even wrestling, and they mostly won when they were wrestling. When there was a meet, they mostly won, so that's good. And swimming, there's a lot of enthusiasm with the coach because of his involvement in Tiger Sharks, which is good because it's helping maintain some students who might otherwise go elsewhere if they want to, continue on in swimming in high school. So instead of going to Stowe or Hudson or something like that, there's a better chance that they're going to stay here because of his enthusiasm for that program and his involvement with that program. So that's good news. Bowling, the boys were 10-2, and the girls were 5-7. The boys placed second in the league and second at sectionals, and the girls were 5th in the league and second at sectionals. Apparently, they're looking good for next year. Mr. Johnson made it a point to recognize cheer by saying that they're undefeated. But they had, to be cheerful in an otherwise cheerless time. So they need that recognition. I think that's important. In other news, in football, there are 3 to 5 football players who are committed to universities. So that's good. There was some talk amongst the basketball coaches who that they need some people. They need a board. There's a football board. So if there are community members who are interested in getting involved with something like that, that can help parents who otherwise have some kind of an experience that goes awry and makes them not want to, be involved with that team or whatever the case may be. When there's a board, it's not only a single person, making decisions or whatever the case may be. So if there are community members who are interested in being involved in some way, the coaches they really wanted to make that point that they could use people. As far as the finances, it's obviously not great for obvious reasons. But there are some things that they tried to do to, you know, as a tourniquet. So they didn't hire any police for for any of the games, I guess, which saved them $300 per game. Mr. Johnson himself ran scoreboards at wrestling matches, which allowed him to like learn more about wrestling, which he was happy to do. He said he'll continue to do that. Apparently, Miss Bogdan had a hilarious experience running the school scoreboard. Next year, they're going to do all online ticketing for all the athletic events, which might cause some gripes at first. But once people get used to it, they think that it's going to be good news. There are some things that still have to be worked out as far as like, you know, if there's a ticket that's cheaper than like the fee that you have to pay to buy the ticket. So they need to look into some of that stuff. But also, one of the issues with the finances was that there were officials needed even when there weren't spectators allowed. So they couldn't collect money for tickets, but they still had to pay the officials to run the games. So there was no ticket revenue. That was problematic. And then spring sports don't charge, so there's no money really made. But they're going to be able to start going back to the businesses for money and, you know, other means of generating revenue during the spring. Also, they're moving to the American Conference, or they've moved to the American Conference.
Mixture.
So that's going to cause some revenue loss because there will be some games that they just don't charge for in that conference.
And they'll charge it to lower levels.
Yeah. Okay.
Middle school.
So just a couple more things. I'm sorry, I'm going really long here. There was a big point of getting kids out. There was a discussion, I think it was Miss Bogdan actually, who said that she'd heard somewhere that people have talked like, you know, in the next 20 years, we could see the end of high school sports. A lot of that has to do with getting kids out for these sports. And in some cases, it's because of travel teams in which parents have to pay to bring their kids. Sometimes the example was somebody bringing their kid from Cuyahoga Falls to Lorraine to play a team from Stowe. It doesn't make sense. There's a problem with equity in terms of like who can afford to even do this. And when you have kids participating in those leagues, they're not participating in the school leagues, which is hurting the school league, right? Generating interest at younger levels is going to help students be prepared to play sports at a high school level versus if they come into high school and they're playing basketball for the first time, which is kind of what was discussed. There are some ways that is happening. Coach Shane is going to have a flag football league for the little ones. Did he say 4 to 6? Grades 4 to 6? K to 6? Yeah. Littler ones, anyway. On the actual field out there, which I think will be awesome for them. I'm really excited about that, and I commend Coach Shane for doing that. I think it's great. We talked a bit about some new sports that we've talked about before, whether or not we could get some of those things up and running, like lacrosse, ice hockey, those types of things. And again, it's a problem of getting kids out. Having to sustain a club, did you say for 2 years before it can become a team, right? So really, any ways that we can get kids interested younger to come out and play sports is going to help, you know, build these teams up when they get up to the high school level. The spring sports are about to start up. I know I got my calendar filled with all kinds of games. Hopefully we can start looking, going out and enjoying some of these games. And I live right around the corner from Harrington Field, so I'm going to be seeing a lot of softball games, I think. My kids are in kindergarten, so the opportunity to take them to see a softball game, to see a baseball game, to see a tennis match, whatever it may be, is an opportunity to help get them interested in sports at a young age and potentially want to play when they get bigger. Even though in our family, I mean, just being honest, I'm an arts guy. I'm a musician. My wife, she played sports but isn't really into that anymore. So we'll see if our kids get into it, but at least we can bring them there and see if it takes. So that's it. Sorry for the long report.
We appreciate all that information, Dr. Hall. Thank you. Board policy, Ms. White or Mr. Gomez?
Outside of what we presented tonight, work continues, as we heard earlier, on the homework and late work policies with the goal of having something to present to us by the end of this school year, so that's coming up pretty quickly, that then we can look at as a board and get, make tweaks to and have implemented and fully approved as a district-wide policy by the beginning of next year, so that we will have district-wide standards on what that looks like for homework, what the goals are, what the intentions are. So that's important work to roll in with all our curriculum. And then we continue to have discussions on what a district-wide racial equity as well as overarching equity piece should look like. I've had discussions with Mr. Lazar and Dr. Nichols, and now we have Ms. Stoikoi on her DEI committee for OASBO. So we're just pulling all the resources and trying to listen to those that have gone before us in terms of what this should look like, but while not losing sight of the fact that work needs done now. So we're looking at the resolution that the board approved last year, and that's really essentially the policy until there is a policy. So there is guiding principles, but before we make a policy, we want to make sure that we have every little piece of research done that we can to make sure that it's as up to date as it can be.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Business Advisory Council? Nothing really. None. Financial Advisory Committee, Dr. Hall?
No, we met in mid-February and we'll meet again on May 13th.
Thank you. Foundation Alumni Association, Mr. Gomez?
I was unable to attend the last meeting, unfortunately, but we have 3 people that were there. So if one of them, Ms. Moffett, wants to give us an update.
Oh, it was a wonderful meeting. We had a Star Award winner make a presentation about the connection between the foundation and the Cuyahoga Falls City School District. She did a wonderful job, so thank you, Ms. Stoikoi. Help me out. I can never remember. Thank you, Christy. Stoikoi. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Dr. Nichols presented many of the things that we heard again tonight from TBA. The foundation is busy preparing for our virtual ceremony May 10th to honor our distinguished alumni people, along with our students who will be receiving scholarships. We only had 65 students apply this year. Not all of the scholarship applications were complete. This is down at least 40 to 50 students compared to last year. We're not sure if COVID had a direct impact on that or not, but we're processing and going through those applications so that they can be awarded. Teacher grants will be provided that night as well to the deserving recipients. And I think that's it for now.
Mrs. Moffett, will that be Zoomed for folks to
I believe it's going to be
log
YouTube.
on? Okay, great, thank you, thank you.
And Mr. Lucas Fry had a bad night. Will be helping us with that. We're going to be sending things to him. He's going to coordinate it and put it together for us so that we can watch that on May the 10th.
Great, thank you. Legislative Liaison, Mr. Gomez.
Outside of House Bill 67, just adding, Rutzel and Andrus has been sending us information about a speaker series they're having about the State House. The next one coming up, the Lieutenant Governor is going to speak at it. So if you haven't had an opportunity to register for that, I'd invite you to. If you didn't, first, I'm pretty sure we're all getting the link because Ms. Schofield and I had a conversation, but if for some reason you're not, let me know and I'll make sure to forward them. And then this Friday, 3 of the state representatives, Leader Sykes, State Representative Golensky, State Representative Weinstein, and Senator Sykes are hosting a forum on the budget for Summit County elected officials. If any of you are interested in that, please let me know and I can forward you the link to that. I got a call and they asked me to make sure that everyone else on the board was aware. Let me know. It's 10:30 to noon on Friday and I can forward the information if you'd like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Student achievement in the Ohio Department of Education's continuing quest to provide professional development to teachers from all different departments across the state. We have some upcoming meetings. They're always from 3:30 to 4:30 virtually, online and free of charge. March 31st will be physical education teachers. April 5th, cultural awareness and equity. And April 21st, middle school and high school reading interventions. Also, Ohio Department of Education has been responsive to districts' requests to provide some preventative and supportive ideas for building teams to deal with student attendance and engagement. So they have set up a specific webpage that they've launched with ideas for districts to use in that regard. The next DLT meeting's Monday, April 5th, and the next Wellness and Success is April 7th. And that's it for student achievement.
Ms. Schofield, the April 5th date will have to be, that's a district comp day.
Oh, okay. It is not April 5th. There we go. Item J.
Huh?
Item J.
Yeah.
Move to adjourn.
So second. Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Moffitt?
Aye.
Ms. Schofield?
Aye.
Ms. Blake?
Aye. Okay. Everything okay on your